Hello, everyone. My name is Isabel Martinez. I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to discuss um, this program that I have developed called Building Stronger Families, and it is a curriculum that will help support immigrant families through a hybrid parent engagement activities. The idea is that this will be an app that will be able to be distributed at various childcare centers, and it would have a collaboration between our agency and the host sites, so that parents can be involved in community events and parent engagement activities and different things. So we'll discuss that as I continue with the presentation. So what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm presenting on, is we're going to talk about the community that this targets. So our program is hoping to target Houston and Harris County. Why is it that we're wanting to target this area? We're also going to talk about current strategies that are being utilized, and why we need to start from the bottom, and what I mean by starting from the bottom, right? And then lastly, we're just going to recap all the things that we discussed, and hopefully you will leave with a better understanding of this project and program. So Harris County currently has 4,835,125 residents. The demographics here in Houston, or Harris County, is 26% white, 44% Hispanic, 19% Black, 7.4% Asian, and 3.6% identifying as other races or nationalities or ethnicities. Of the residents in Harris County, 27.3% of them are foreign born. And then we're going to talk about early childhood education. So that is why this statistic is in here. So 82% of children under the age of 5 are children of color. So that means we have a really large, diverse BIPOC community here in Harris County. So Harris County, unfortunately, also has high crime rates. So domestic violence incidences have increased by 28% only between 2019 and 2020. Data regarding the more recent years has not been released yet, but still 28% within a 1 year time difference is huge. Domestic violence homicides have increased in Harris County, while the rest of the state saw a decrease in homicides related to domestic violence. So that's definitely telling us a lot. If the state is doing better, why is Harris County doing worse? Assaults have increased almost 30% between 2019 and 2020. So this includes physical assault and sexual assault. So again, the fact that these crimes continue to increase within the last couple of years is astonishing. And also, murders have increased approximately 41% between 2019 and 2020. Again, these are horrendous crimes and violent crimes. So we know that violence in Houston is very real. So, how or what are we doing to prevent violence? The CDC has developed a very thorough approach to violence prevention. It looks at the 3 levels of prevention efforts, very similar to the medical prevention models that they have developed and discovered. So the focus is on tackling the issues in all levels of prevention, so primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. The biggest factors or strategies that I will discuss today revolve around youth programs, as well as access to early childhood education and parental engagement. So these are 3 of the many strategies that the CDC states are important to preventing violence. And those are the things that we will continue to discuss. In looking at youth programming for domestic violence, or I apologize, for violence prevention, we know that these strategies focus on youth between the ages of 10 to 24. We also know that a lot of these build in violence prevention programs in schools. So that's where a large part of these strategies have taken place. However, having worked in this field previously, I know that, especially in Texas, a lot of the school districts are no longer allowing prevention programs to take place within the schools because of some of the topics discussed in those programs. So it's becoming harder and harder to engage children, specifically children within the ideal age range for primary prevention, which is children who have not experienced violence. So under the age of 13, maybe would be ideal. Though that age group is really hard to engage with because of the various barriers. We also know that government-specific departments called the National Centers of Excellence in Youth Violence Prevention exists. So this agency focuses on preventing or establishing programs that prevent violence in young people. So that typically is gang violence, dating violence, community violence, and things of that nature. So the National Centers of Excellence in Youth Violence Prevention does a lot of programming and projects. Their main focus is research. They monitor trends, develop strategies based on the research. Again, it's important to note that this is a government agency, and so the government in itself has identified various ways to prevent violence, right? And so this is just one subgroup, if you will, of their strategy. So the outcomes that the agency has developed is they reevaluate every 4 years. They currently, their website doesn't have any data from 2016 to 2021. And they're currently funding for research for the program years of 2021 through 2026. And so the partners that they work with are mostly universities, right? Because they focus on research. So they focus, they're working with the Centers for Youth Equity at Tulane University, Kansas City Youth Violence Prevention Research Center, Michigan Youth Violence Prevention Center, Clark Hill Institute for Positive Youth Development in Virginia Commonwealth, University, Healthy Communities for Youth. And then finally, the Youth Violence Prevention Center in Denver. Again, one of the things you'll notice is these are programs that are connected to research at the university level. They are also or programs that focus primarily in youth violence prevention. So we're looking at ages 10 to 24. So in Houston, we know, in Harris County specifically, we know that there are no government funded research that is being done in Texas. There is programs through the University of Texas that's doing some research. Harris County's Early Childhood Resiliency Fund is also a project that is conducting research on the intersection of early childhood and violence prevention. We also know that Texas incarcerates individuals at a higher rate than even other developed countries. And why is that important? Because Texas actually spends 40% less in funding on early childhood education than the rest of the country. And we also know that Texas spends a large amount of funding on prisons and building prisons and those type of things and incarcerating people. So we pay to imprison people, but we don't pay to educate young children. Something to think about. So now we're going to talk about some of the strategies that Harris County is actually doing to prevent violence. What is the work being done here locally? We have the Child Care Council of Greater Houston. So that project only supports one early childhood center, child care center, but they do support 6 after-school programs. Again, access to quality care. Well, not again, I guess I didn't mention that earlier, but access to quality care is another violence prevention strategy. So not just early childhood education, but also a safe place to go during the day. Harris County also has the juvenile delinquency program, and this program supports individuals ages 6 to 21, and they have 5 after school community partners. So again, after school programming for elementary, middle, high schools. The Youth Coalition, they share research information and training with partners, so they don't engage specifically in prevention strategies directly with individuals who experience violence. They are more about informing communities. So they're more of a tertiary prevention. And then, excuse me, and then United Minds Youth Leadership Advisory Council. So this matches youth with mentors and focuses on gang violence prevention. So this is also more than likely middle school to high school students. As I mentioned earlier, Harris County is a leading source of violence in Texas, and we can note the gap just by the conversations that we're having currently about the strategies that have been um, enacted here in Harris County. So there's a lot of gaps, right? So these are some of the gaps. There's currently no county-sponsored parental engagement program for early childhood, or at least not that I could find for elementary, middle, or high school programs. There's no funding for early childhood. Funding for early childhood program lags behind the rest of the country, even within the county in compared to Texas, right? We are also lagging in funding here. Early childhood data only tracks pre-K programs, so the number of children enrolled in pre-K. We don't track any information of children enrolled in, let's say, Head Start programs or childcare programs or early childhood learning programs. That data is not really being collected by anybody. Of the 13 domestic violence programs, only 4 offer parenting classes and 6 offer advocacy for youth. Of the 13, so again, less than half or approximately half of the domestic violence agencies work with young people or have programs focused on violence prevention, specifically for these programs with youth, right? In the research or in the information that I came across, they do not mention whether or not they have early childhood education at those domestic violence centers. That would be something interesting to know. So why are we starting from the bottom? You've heard me mention a lot about early childhood, early childhood, early childhood. So early childhood is children under the age of 5, so birth to 5 years counts in early childhood or as early childhood. And so we're wanting to start from the bottom. We're wanting to start with the youngest residents in Harris County. Why do we want to start there? Because violence prevention strategies suggest that children who participate in early childhood programs are less likely to engage in violent behavior. It's a direct connection. If you go to a Head Start program, you're more than likely not going to engage in violence. That is a direct connection. Parents who are engaged in their child's learning continue to support children into middle and high school, and those children are less likely to also participate in violent behavior. Again, if parents are involved in their daycare programs or early childhood education programs, then they're more likely to continue to be involved throughout that child's life, and more consistent and reliable parents are able to raise nonviolent children. So the intersection of violence prevention and early childhood interventions or early childhood education is as such. So early childhood education provides a strong foundation for children. It allows for parents to participate and engage in their child's education. It provides a space for them to connect with in the community. So they connect with other parents, they connect with the schools, the staff at the child centers. It also creates a network of positive adults to support the children. So you get play dates, you get fairs where you get to meet other families that go to the same school. This is where you have people that are best friends for life, right? And then you also have centers that can provide support through collaboration with domestic violence centers. So let's say a domestic violence center does not have an early childhood program or a daycare option at their center. So maybe this is an opportunity to collaborate with them. Maybe the center can fund some of the programming at the childcare um, center. So like we can put, let's say a childcare domestic violence agency gets a grant for childcare, and they can hold a spot for their kids in the daycare. So we can reserve 3 spaces for children from our domestic violence shelter in your childcare. And so they're collaborating with the daycare center, which allows for increased access to stable childcare for families staying at a domestic violence center. So again, these are kind of some of the intersections of where and why early childhood, a focus in early childhood is important. So what are some of the barriers to parent engagement? Again, parent engagement related to early childhood education and related to violence prevention. So one of the barriers is access to quality childcare with parent engagement programs. So you have a lot of daycares, and not all of them have parent engagement programs. And so here we are offering a program that focuses on parent engagement. And this benefits actually the child care centers because for national accreditation, they require a parent engagement program. They require parent volunteers at their center. And so it's kind of a win-win for them because they get parents involved, they get better rankings for their accreditation process, and it allows us to provide some of these violence prevention strategies with the parents at their centers. Um, the cost is another barrier to parent engagement. Daycares, again, are underfunded, understaffed, like most agencies that we know of. Even though they are for profit, a lot of them, there's still not enough funding um, to to participate or to create a parent engagement program. Who's going to staff it, right? Are they going to offer childcare during the parent engagement programs or parenting classes? How are they going to pay for the space, right? Part of the reason why some of these centers don't have parent engagement programs. There's limited time to participate in parent engagement. If you're working, if you're going to school, if you're doing both, you have very little time to participate in extra things after, right? You barely have time to breathe and sleep. How are you going to be an engaged parent at your child's daycare? It's hard. It's hard to do. And so this is where our platform comes in. And then lastly, one an additional barrier is the language, right? So we talked about how 27% of residents in Harris County are foreign born, which means we have a diverse language base here in Harris County. And so what languages are we offering programs in? What languages do childcare centers have access to? All important questions. So, what is the plan? The plan to incorporate violent prevention into early childhood education is we want to look at the social ecological model, which talks about individuals, relationships, communities, and society. So, our Building Stronger Families curriculum will focus in all 3 levels or all 4 levels of the social ecological model, which is a model that is used by the CDC for the purpose of prevention. So, at the individual level, we look at supporting children's emotional intelligence and regulation by providing training to child care workers and families. We also provide moments for children to engage with their parents and communities through some of the activities incorporated into the curriculum. We help build relationships. So in the relationship level, we support centers with family engagement opportunities so that the parents can connect with the community, can connect with these centers. We provide virtual or hybrid parenting classes, which makes it more accessible for parents to participate. And then we incorporate family nights into centers events so that they are able to, again, build that connection to the center, build that support system within each other, parent to center, and center to parent, a trifecta, if you will, of a support system. How does this engage in the community? So by facilitating this curriculum at a center, we're able to ensure parks and community spaces are clean. Why? Because maybe that's going to be a family engagement night or activity on a weekend. Let's do a cleanup day at the park, right? Let's clean our playground here at the center. Let's do something that can beautify our spaces. It encouraged more visits to museums through collaboration. So the Children's Museum of Houston offers free Thursday nights. They also offer certificates for visiting the Children's Museum on different nights. So daycare centers can participate in that program, or we can participate in this program and then distribute those tickets to the childcare centers. It connects DV centers with childcare programs in their area. We talked about that earlier. It incorporates violence prevention and nonviolent communication lessons in staff's annual training and in the parent engagement program as well, or the parenting classes / curriculum also have nonviolent communication as part of the classes. And then for society, it provides training for early childhood education teachers, even those that are not directly involved with the whole sites. And it creates policies and lobbies for additional funding for early childhood education. The fact that we are focusing on early childhood, and if we are able to show that this project or this program works and is decreasing violence within families, then perhaps we can get the government, specifically the state of Texas, to provide more funding for early childhood education. So this is a timeline for the potential project. So my hope is in working with you all, we can finalize and move forward with this. So the first part is actually creating the virtual training. So maybe connecting with a developer of apps or web-based training program to develop the platform that we want to incorporate this digital project. Also a training for parents that is hybrid, focused on healthy relationships and nonviolent communication. So develop these trainings and record videos to upload into this platform. And then we also want to obtain funding, right? That's probably key. So applying for grants or for implementing the program and finalizing the application or platforms for training. So we can't develop an app if we don't have money to pay for the app, right? So funding is going to be very crucial, and where you all as stakeholders come in. We want to connect with childcare and learning centers. So we want to identify learning centers in at-risk communities that could benefit from this program. And then we want to have an agency open house with resources for childcare workers. So maybe have some type of a training day where we offer continuing education, or have some type of conference that again offers free continuing education or offers stipends or scholarships for for childcare workers. We also want to provide sub-grant opportunities or stipends for these programs if they decide or choose to be host sites of the curriculum. Maybe we can provide stipends for paying for the cost of utilizing their facilities after hours once a month, right? For being a network or connection with our application and promoting these actions or this program. We also want to have focus groups somewhere along the process from the initiation of the project, as we grow in the project, having some conversations with parents and participants and community members about what their experience is like and how this has impacted their understanding of violence and violence prevention. And then from those focus groups, we want to identify pain points because we know this is a learning curve, right? Something like this has not been done before, at least not to my knowledge. And so the hope is that we can learn from each other. We learn from parents and parents learn from us. And then we want to begin from there, if everything goes as planned, to start the expansion of this program, evaluate the strategies, and then maybe host a large scale community event centered on violence prevention that will maybe have some graduates of the curriculum that help facilitate or host it or help in the planning of this event. So why do we need this digital application? What are some of the benefits of having a hybrid program and only having once a month in-person sessions? Well, we know that parents, especially those who send their kids to childcare, often don't have time to do parent engagement classes or parenting classes or opportunities to engage in their child's childcare centers. So this will hopefully increase access to some of these programs. Because it can be done outside of normal business hours. They can watch the videos on weekends. They can do the activities on their own time and not be forced to do it when the school has availability, right? The hope is that maybe once a month activities would be attainable or achievable, but weekly sessions, not so much. And then we have these ideas for family engagement readily available for centers. So what are some of the things that we can do with parents? What are some of the ways we can help have them come and be involved at our centers? So this provides those opportunities. They can send homework or activities home with parents via the app. If they're talking about the solar system or what have you, maybe that could be one of their parent engagement activities that families can do at home. The sky is the limit with digital, right? And so I know we talked a lot. We talked about this project. We talked about the curriculum in really high level programming, right? So just kind of this presentation is so that you all get an idea of what we're wanting to achieve and the process that we have to go through in order to make it happen, right? I need you all's buy-in. I need you all's support in order to move forward with this project. And so in summary, so violence prevention strategies currently in Houston and Harris County do not support or include early childhood in their programming. And domestic violence centers did not incorporate violence prevention through parenting classes or parent engagement opportunities at their centers. For early childhood education, we don't have any current data on children who are enrolled in child care and its connection to violence. Again, we do want to mention Harris County's and the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council and their Early Childhood Resiliency Fund. They are starting to do some projects and some programming around early childhood and violence prevention. And so we definitely want to name that is something that's happening, but the data is not out yet, right? Hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll have some information based on the work that they're doing. But at the same time, some of their projects are not really centered on immigrants, right? Our project will be. The hope is that we will be able to support immigrants and immigrant families. Also, childcare centers and early childhood education centers lack funding to incorporate some of these projects or parent engagement or parenting classes. They don't have staff trained or the resources to become host sites for some of these. And so if we're able to provide a stipend and if we're able to do the work for them, then the hope is that they can do, especially if they're in at-risk communities, right? The hope is that we will be able to reduce some barriers for the families in those communities. The intersection of Domestic violence violence prevention and early childhood. Child care and early childhood education centers are required to provide training for staff regarding child abuse annually. And so violence prevention can be incorporated into that training. We want to promote violence prevention and ensure that all people, even those who are staff at these agencies or at these centers, are aware of some of the strategies to reduce violence. And then we want to make sure that primary prevention happens before a violent incident occurs. So we don't want children who have, we want to support children who have already been exposed to violence, but we don't want children to ever have to be exposed to violence. And so the easiest and the fastest way to do that is to start training their parents before they can put the children in situations where they are exposed to violence. So we're building safety factors at birth. And so some of the barriers, as we mentioned earlier, is funding. So we have to apply for grants and get donors and people to buy into the project so that we can secure stipends and funding for those centers in at-risk communities. Access to early childhood programs in at-risk communities is very limited. There's often wait lists. It's unattainable. We know that childcare is expensive, often costing more than a mortgage. And so families who are low income and are more susceptible to violence often don't have access to quality childcare. And so the other part is the development of the application or the program. It's not easy to develop an app. I don't know how to do it, and we need to find someone that does. And so that is a barrier because I wish I could just snap my fingers and make it happen, but unfortunately, that is not the case. So here's some of the potential outcomes. Again, this is focused on the social ecological model where we're talking about individuals, relationships, communities, and society in the prevention, right? So in the individual level, that's looking at the children. The primary prevention is focusing on children who have not experienced violence. And so the hope is that when we focus in early childhood, we are able to increase a child's emotional intelligence and resiliency by the training that we're providing parents and staff of the child care centers. They will be able to then transfer their knowledge and understanding to the children that they work with or the children that they're raising, which causes an increase in self-regulation for children. And so they're going to be able to manage their emotions a little bit better. And so when they get into adulthood, they can still use some of these skills learned in early childhood. And they increase social emotional skills as well with an understanding. If your parents are able to express their emotions, the children will follow suit. With relationships, so again, similar to what I just mentioned, parents increase knowledge regarding the impact of violence on children. The hope is that they're able to build a safer system or a safer environment for their children. Parents' engagement with children to follow them throughout their education. So if a parent is engaged in early childhood, they're more than likely to engage into the child's education in the future as well. Early childhood education centers and TV centers are better connected to each other. They can refer to each other, they can connect with each other, and just be an overall support to each other. Increase in family focused community events is a hope that can come out of this. So, building safer and stronger communities, and then increase the knowledge of the impact of violence on children. That information will also be available to communities and the agencies through word of mouth, right? Talking to each other, having dialogue about violence and violence prevention and building safer communities. And then society, the hope is that we are going to be able to create policies related to domestic violence and or violence prevention and increasing access to early childhood education. So we can gather data and information and talking points and present this to state and federal funders so that they can invest more in our young children. And also, we can increase data related to ACE and violence prevention. So again, some of the things that I've been mentioning, to know is to be empowered. The more we know, the more we are empowered to prevent violence. And so the hope is that through this curriculum and through establishing it in at-risk communities, those same communities will be empowered to stop violence. We cannot rescue or save people. We can just give them the information they need to save themselves and their families, to protect themselves and their families from violence. And so this is the end of my presentation. Muchas gracias. Thank you for your time and your patience as I muddled through some of this. Was definitely a good experience for me to have this conversation with you. I am open to any questions or feedbacks or thoughts on what you all just learned. Here are some of the resources related to the conversations that we had and the sources for the different pictures. They're all stock images, but yes. Thank you again, and you all have a great day. Thanks. Bye.